Jenna leaned against the counter of the dimly lit gas station, staring blankly at the quiet road outside. The hum of the overhead fluorescent lights filled the silence, a constant reminder of the long, lonely hours she spent here. It was past midnight, and the world outside felt abandoned, except for the occasional car that rolled up for gas or a late-night snack. She exhaled slowly, rubbing her tired eyes. 2 years at this job, and it still felt like she was just getting by, never moving forward. The paycheck barely covered her rent, groceries, and the little extra she sent to her younger brother for his school fees. He was the reason she kept going, the reason she put up with rude customers, long hours, and the endless exhaustion that weighed on her shoulders. Jenna never complained, though. She knew there were people who had it worse. The bell above the door jingled, snapping her out of her thoughts. She straightened up as a customer walked in. The woman looked like she had been through a storm. Her clothes were wrinkled, her eyes swollen as if she had been crying for hours. She moved hesitantly, her arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold something together that was already falling apart. "Hi," the woman said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Can I fill up my tank?" "I'll pay inside." Jenna gave her a polite nod, pressing a few buttons on the register. "Sure. How much do you need?" The woman hesitated, glancing at the car parked outside. It was an old, beat-up sedan with dents along the side, the kind of car that had seen better days but had been pushed past its limits. "Full tank," she said, sounding uncertain. Jenna nodded and rang up the total. $35. The woman reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill, smoothing it out against the counter. Then she dug through her purse, her fingers moving quickly, searching. Her breathing grew unsteady, her expression shifting from hopeful to panicked. Jenna could tell. She already knew. The woman's hands trembled as she emptied her purse, revealing nothing but a few pennies, an expired coupon, and a receipt from a fast food restaurant. "I'm so sorry," the woman whispered, her voice breaking. "I thought I had more. I don't know what happened." Jenna's heart ached at the sight of her. The woman looked utterly defeated, as if this moment was just another weight added to an already unbearable load. "Hey, it's okay," Jenna said gently, offering a reassuring smile. "Don't worry about it." The woman looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" Jenna glanced around to make sure no one else was in the store. The security cameras were there, of course, watching everything. But at this hour, no one really paid attention. "I mean," Jenna said, lowering her voice, "just take the gas. You need it, right?" The woman's eyes widened. "Are you sure? I don't want to get you in trouble." Jenna waved off her concern. "I'll be fine. Just go home safely." For a moment, the woman just stood there, staring at her, as if she couldn't believe what was happening. Then, with tears shining in her eyes, she whispered, "Thank you." She turned and hurried back to her car, her hands shaking as she started the engine. Before driving off, she gave Jenna one last look, a look filled with gratitude that words could never express. Jenna watched her disappear into the night, feeling a warmth in her chest she hadn't felt in a long time. It was just $15. To the gas station, it was nothing. But to that woman, it meant everything. She only wished that kindness didn't come with consequences. Because the next morning, Jenna's world would come crashing down. Jenna arrived at the gas station the next morning, still feeling good about what she had done the night before. She didn't regret it, not even for a second. That woman had looked so broken, so lost. If a simple act of kindness could make a difference, Jenna was glad she had done it. But the moment she stepped inside, she knew something was wrong. Her manager, Mr. Carter, stood behind the counter, his arms crossed tightly over his chest. His face was red with anger, and in front of him, on the counter, was a printed report, one Jenna recognized instantly. It was the sales record from last night. "Jenna," Mr. Carter said sharply, his voice cutting through the morning silence. Jenna's stomach tightened. She felt the weight of the situation settle on her shoulders. "Yes?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Mr. Carter slammed his hand down on the report. You want to explain this? Jenna stepped closer, her eyes scanning the page. There it was, plain as day, a $15 shortage. She swallowed hard. I let someone take the gas without paying, she admitted quietly. She didn't have enough money, and she looked like she really needed help. Mr. Carter let out a sharp laugh, shaking his head. Unbelievable. Jenna, this is a business. You don't just get to give away free gas whenever you feel like it. Do you have any idea how this makes us look? I know, Jenna said, forcing herself to stay calm. But she was struggling. She had kids, and she was desperate. Mr. Carter's jaw clenched. Do you know how many people come in here struggling? Do you think we can afford to hand out free gas every time someone has a sad story? Jenna's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't want to argue, but she couldn't ignore the feeling in her gut that told her she had done the right thing. It was $15, she said softly. I'll cover it from my paycheck if that's what it takes. Mr. Carter shook his head, running a hand through his graying hair. That's not the point, Jenna. You broke company policy. You made a decision that wasn't yours to make, and now I have to make a decision too. Jenna stiffened. What do you mean? Mr. Carter sighed, looking genuinely regretful for the first time. Corporate has been looking for reasons to cut back on staff. Times are tough. And this. He tapped the report. This is exactly the kind of thing that puts a target on your back. I don't have a choice, Jenna. Jenna's breath caught in her throat. You're firing me. Mr. Carter hesitated. I don't want to, but I have to. If it wasn't this, they'd find something else. I'll give you a good reference, and you'll get your last paycheck at the end of the week. The world seemed to tilt around Jenna. She had worked here for 2 years. She had come in early, stayed late, covered shifts when people called out. And now, over $15, she was being tossed out like she meant nothing. I can't believe this, she whispered. I did the right thing. That's not how the world works, Mr. Carter said, his voice softening. I know you have a good heart, Jenna, but sometimes good people get the short end of the stick. Jenna felt numb as she walked to the back room, grabbed her jacket, and returned to the front. She avoided everyone's eyes as she pushed the door open and stepped into the crisp morning air. The reality of what had just happened hit her like a punch to the gut. She was jobless. She had rent due in 2 weeks. She had no idea what to do next. The sting of injustice burned in her chest. She had helped someone, and this was her reward. She started walking, not even sure where she was going. The gas station had been her stability, and now it was gone. Minutes blurred together as she wandered down the sidewalk, lost in thought. And then a low rumble reached her ears. She turned her head just in time to see it. A black Rolls-Royce rolling slowly down the street, its polished surface gleaming under the morning sun. She barely had time to react before the luxury car pulled up right beside her, its tinted window lowering with a soft hum. Jenna blinked, her breath catching as she recognized the woman in the driver's seat. It was her, the woman from last night. Only now she looked completely different. Her hair was neatly styled, her clothes were elegant, and there was a confidence in her posture that hadn't been there before. Jenna took a step back, her heart pounding. The woman smiled. "Get in," she said. Jenna hesitated, her mind racing. This had to be some kind of mistake. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman's eyes softened. "Because I owe you everything." Jenna stared at her, the weight of the morning still heavy on her shoulders. She had lost her job. She had no plan. But somehow, she had the feeling that this moment was about to change everything. Time. Olivia took a deep breath. Last night, I wasn't myself. I was in one of the worst moments of my life. Her grip on the steering wheel tightened. I had just left my husband. Jenna's brows furrowed. "Your husband?" Olivia nodded. "I was married to a very wealthy man. He gave me everything. This car, a mansion, money to spend on whatever I wanted. But what he didn't give me was freedom. Her voice grew quieter. Or kindness. Jenna stayed silent, listening intently. For years, I lived in luxury, but behind closed doors, I was miserable. He controlled everything. What I wore, who I talked to, where I went. He made sure I had no access to money that wasn't under his control. I felt like a prisoner in a golden cage. Olivia exhaled sharply. Yesterday was the first time I left. I grabbed whatever I could fit into a bag, took my car, and drove. But in my panic, I forgot my wallet. I didn't even realize until I was almost out of gas. I had nothing except that crumpled $20 bill. Jenna's heart ached for her. When you helped me, Olivia continued, her voice soft. It wasn't just about the gas. It was the first time in years that someone was kind to me without expecting something in return. You saw a stranger in need and chose to help. You have no idea what that meant to me. Jenna swallowed the lump in her throat. So, what happened after that? Olivia's lips curved into a small smile. I drove straight to the only friend I had left, my old attorney. He had been trying to convince me to leave my husband for years, but I was too scared. Last night, he helped me access a private account I had hidden away. It wasn't much compared to what my husband controlled, but it was enough to start over. Enough to finally be free. Jenna was stunned. She had thought she was helping a struggling single mother. Instead, she had unknowingly helped a woman escape a life of control and abuse. I wanted to find you, Olivia said, to thank you properly. But when I went to the gas station this morning, I heard what happened. Jenna tensed. So you know I got fired. Olivia nodded. And it's not fair. You did something good, and you lost your job for it. Jenna let out a humorless laugh. Yeah, well, life's not exactly fair, is it? Olivia turned onto a quiet street, pulling up in front of a sleek, modern building. It looked like a high-end office space, all glass windows and steel beams. I want to make you an offer, Olivia said, shifting in her seat to face Jenna. Come work for me. Jenna blinked. Work for you? Doing what? Olivia smiled. Helping me build my new life. I need someone I can trust, someone with a good heart. Someone who isn't afraid to take risks for the right reasons. I have resources now, but I don't want to just rebuild my life. I want to use what I have to help other people, the way you helped me. Jenna's mind spun. This morning, she had been unemployed, hopeless, walking aimlessly through the streets. Now, a woman she had met less than 24 hours ago was offering her a job that sounded like it actually meant something. I don't know, Jenna admitted. I mean, I've never done anything like that before. Olivia smiled knowingly. Neither have I. But I think we'd make a good team. Jenna looked out the window at the sleek building, then back at Olivia. She had taken a chance last night, and it had cost her everything. But maybe, just maybe, this chance would give her something even greater in return. Jenna sat in the luxurious Rolls-Royce, staring at Olivia as if she had just spoken in another language. Work for her, a complete stranger. The idea felt absurd, yet there was something about Olivia's offer that pulled at her. The morning had started with Jenna feeling lost and hopeless. Now she was being offered a fresh start, one she never saw coming. Still, doubt crept in. Why me? Jenna finally asked, her voice quieter than she intended. You don't even know me. Olivia smiled, but there was something deeper in her gaze. I know enough, she said. I know that you're kind when no one's watching. I know that you're willing to help a stranger, even at your own expense. And I know that right now, you need a chance just as much as I do. Jenna exhaled slowly, gripping her hands together in her lap. She had spent years working at the gas station, barely scraping by. And what had it gotten her? A pink slip over $15. What did she really have to lose? She glanced out the window at the towering building Olivia had parked in front of. It was nothing like the rundown places Jenna had worked before. It looked important, serious, like it belonged to people who had their lives together, people who knew what they were doing. Jenna wasn't sure she belonged here. "You don't have to decide right now," Olivia said, sensing her hesitation. "Just come inside with me. Let me show you what I'm trying to build." Jenna nodded slowly. "Okay, but no promises." Olivia chuckled. "Fair enough." She stepped out of the car, and Jenna followed, feeling completely out of place as she walked into the sleek, glass-walled lobby. Everything was pristine: shiny floors, tall ceilings, and a receptionist who barely glanced up from her computer as Olivia led Jenna toward the elevator. They rode up in silence, the soft hum of the elevator filling the space between them. When the doors opened, Jenna expected another polished office setting. Instead, she stepped into what looked like a workspace in progress. The walls were lined with whiteboards covered in notes, ideas, and scribbles. Boxes were stacked in one corner, and a long wooden table sat in the middle of the room, cluttered with papers, coffee cups, and laptops. It was a mix of chaos and potential, and somehow, Jenna found it comforting. "This is where it starts," Olivia said, walking toward the table. "I told you I wanted to use my resources to help people, and this is the beginning of that. I want to build something meaningful, a foundation, a company, something that actually makes a difference." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "You say that like you're still figuring it out." Olivia laughed. "Because I am." She turned to Jenna, leaning against the table. "I spent years being controlled, being told what to do, how to live. Now, for the first time, I get to choose. But that also means I have to figure out what that choice looks like." Jenna crossed her arms. "And where do I fit into this?" Olivia pushed a stack of papers aside and gestured for Jenna to sit. Jenna hesitated before pulling out a chair. "You told me you worked at the gas station for 2 years," Olivia said. "Before that?" Jenna shrugged. "A few retail jobs. A diner for a while. Nothing special." Olivia tilted her head. "And do you think any of that means you're not capable of doing something more?" Jenna opened her mouth to argue, then hesitated. She had never really thought about it like that. She had worked hard her entire life, but it had always been about survival, not growth. She had never considered if she was capable of something bigger because no one had ever given her the chance. "I don't know," she admitted. Olivia smiled. "Then let's find out." She pulled out a tablet and tapped the screen. "I want to start small. I want to help people like you. People who work hard, who do the right thing, but still get knocked down by life. Maybe that means financial help, job placements, support systems. I don't have all the answers yet, but I need someone to help me put the pieces together. Someone who knows what it's like to struggle. Someone who can see the problems that people like me never had to think about before." Jenna frowned. "You think I can help you do that?" "I think you're the perfect person to help me do that." Jenna stared at her, trying to read between the lines. Olivia wasn't just offering her a job. She was offering her a purpose. For so long, Jenna had been stuck in survival mode. Paycheck to paycheck, shift after shift, always scraping by, always worrying about what came next. This was the first time someone had looked at her and seen something more. She let out a slow breath. "If I do this, I'm going to mess up. I don't know the first thing about building a company or running an organization." Olivia grinned. "Neither do I. But I figure if we're going to make mistakes, at least we'll be making them for the right reasons." Jenna thought about that. About how, just hours ago, she had felt like the world had swallowed her whole. About how a single act of kindness had brought her here, to this moment, to this opportunity. She thought about how, maybe her life wasn't falling apart. Maybe it was just starting over. She looked at Olivia, then at the chaos of the workspace around her. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged. "All right," she said finally, a small smile creeping onto her lips. "Let's do this." Jenna sat at the long wooden table, staring at the mountain of notes and scribbled ideas in front of her. She had agreed to help Olivia. But now that she was here, Reality was setting in. This wasn't just some side gig. Olivia wasn't joking. She was really trying to build something that could change lives. And Jenna was supposed to help. "Okay," she said, leaning back in her chair. "So where do we start?" Olivia sat across from her, tapping her fingers against a coffee cup. "I think we need to figure out who we're helping first. There are so many people out there struggling. Single parents, workers stuck in dead-end jobs, people dealing with unexpected hardships. We need to narrow it down." Jenna nodded slowly. "I guess we should start with people like me. People who work hard but keep getting knocked down. The ones who follow the rules, do everything right, but still end up with nothing." Olivia's eyes lit up. "Yes, people like you. People like the woman at the gas station last night." Jenna exhaled, thinking about that woman, how exhausted she had looked, how she had been so embarrassed over $15. That wasn't just one woman's story. That was so many people's reality. "But how do we help them?" Jenna asked. "I mean, we're not a charity. We can't just hand out money to everyone who needs it." Olivia nodded, biting her lip in thought. "What if we don't give them money? What if we give them opportunities?" Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Opportunities." Olivia stood up and started pacing. "Think about it. The biggest problem for people in these situations isn't that they don't work hard. It's that no one sees them. No one gives them a way out. We don't need to just help people. We need to change the system that keeps them stuck in the first place." Jenna sat forward. "So, what? Like job placements?" "Maybe," Olivia said. "But not just that. Maybe financial literacy programs. Maybe mentorships. Maybe a system that helps people move from minimum wage jobs into careers that actually let them build a life." Jenna let out a low whistle. "That's big." "It is," Olivia admitted. "But we don't have to do it all at once. We start small. We test ideas. We build something that actually works." Jenna hesitated. She had never been in a room where decisions like this were made. She had always been on the other side, waiting for someone else to decide her fate. But now she had a seat at the table, and it scared her. "What if we fail?" she asked quietly. Olivia stopped pacing and looked at her. "Then we fail, and we try again. But I'd rather fail trying to make a difference than sit back and do nothing." Jenna swallowed hard. That was the difference between Olivia and her. Olivia had been given the chance to dream big, to believe that failure wasn't the end of the world. Jenna had spent her whole life being afraid of failure because for people like her, failure meant losing everything. But maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to change that. "Okay," she said, pushing a notebook toward Olivia. "Let's figure this out." The next few days were a blur. Jenna and Olivia worked non-stop, brainstorming, planning, and researching. They spent hours on the phone with people Olivia knew, lawyers, business advisors, even an old professor of hers who specialized in social programs. Jenna felt like she was learning an entirely new language. There were legal structures to consider, funding sources to explore, and partnerships to build. It was overwhelming, but for the first time in her life, Jenna felt excited about something. She wasn't just working a job, she was building something that mattered. One evening, after an exhausting 12-hour day, Jenna leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temples. "We need a name." Olivia looked up from her laptop. "For the organization?" Jenna nodded. "Yeah, something that actually means something. Something that makes people feel like they belong." Olivia was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "How about Second Chance Foundation?" Jenna's breath caught in her throat. Second chance. That's exactly what this was. For Olivia. For Jenna. For the people they wanted to help. She smiled. "I love it." Olivia grinned. "Then it's official. Welcome to the Second Chance Foundation." The next few weeks were unlike anything Jenna had ever experienced. From the moment she and Olivia settled on the name Second Chance Foundation, it was like a switch had flipped. Suddenly, They weren't just two women with an idea. They were building something real. Jenna found herself working harder than she ever had before. But for the first time, it wasn't just about survival. She wasn't just punching in and out of a job that didn't care about her. She was creating something that mattered. Days turned into nights as they worked through logistics, legal paperwork, and endless meetings with people who could help shape their vision. Olivia had the resources and connections to open doors Jenna didn't even know existed. But it was Jenna's insight, her first-hand experience of struggle, that gave the foundation its heart. Every time someone doubted their mission, Jenna had a story to tell. The tired mom at the gas station, the workers who got fired over something small and were left with nothing, the people who just needed someone to believe in them. Jenna was becoming the voice of the very people they were trying to help. And for the first time in her life, people were listening. One afternoon, Jenna sat at her desk, her own desk. She still wasn't used to it. Just a few weeks ago, she had been wiping counters at a gas station, and now she had an office, a title, and a mission. She was going through emails when Olivia walked in, holding a thick envelope. "You're gonna want to see this," Olivia said, dropping the envelope onto Jenna's desk. Jenna frowned and picked it up. It was addressed to Second Chance Foundation. She opened it carefully, pulling out a handwritten letter. "Dear Olivia and Jenna, you probably don't remember me, but a few weeks ago, I was the woman at the gas station who couldn't afford my last $15 of gas. That night, I was at my breaking point. I had just lost my job. My rent was overdue, and I was terrified I wouldn't be able to take care of my son. When Jenna covered my gas, she didn't just help me get home. She reminded me that kindness still exists. I went home that night and cried, not because I was hopeless, but because, for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. I don't know if this will mean much, but after that night, I promised myself I wouldn't give up. I found a new job. It's not perfect, but it's a start. And I wanted you to know that because of that one act of kindness, I've started turning my life around. Thank you for everything. Sincerely, Danielle Weston." Jenna stared at the letter, her heart pounding. She remembered Danielle. She had never known what happened to her after that night. Now she did. She looked up at Olivia, her hands shaking. This is why we're doing this." Olivia smiled. "I know." Jenna leaned back in her chair, overwhelmed with emotion. It was real. The work they were doing mattered. She had spent so much of her life believing she was powerless, that she was just another person struggling to get by. But now she was changing lives. The official launch of Second Chance Foundation came faster than Jenna had expected. Olivia had pulled every string she could to set up an event. Nothing fancy, just a gathering to introduce their mission to the world. Jenna stood at the back of the room, feeling completely out of place. Wealthy donors, business owners, and community leaders were all here, listening to Olivia as she spoke on stage. Jenna had planned to stay in the background. She wasn't used to speaking in front of people, but as Olivia wrapped up her speech, she suddenly turned toward Jenna and smiled. "And now," Olivia said, "I want you all to hear from the person who inspired this foundation in the first place." Jenna's stomach dropped. No way. People turned to look at her, and Olivia gestured for her to come up. Jenna shook her head slightly, but Olivia only smiled. "You got this," she mouthed. Jenna took a slow breath. She had faced humiliation. She had faced job loss. She had faced fear. But she had survived. She had rebuilt herself, and now she had the chance to tell her story her way. Jenna forced her feet forward. The crowd quieted as she stepped up to the microphone. Her hands shook slightly, but when she spoke, her voice was strong. "I never thought I'd be standing here," she began. "A few weeks ago, I was fired for covering someone's $15 gas bill. And for a moment, I thought my life was falling apart. But what I didn't know was that it was actually coming together." She took a breath. "This foundation is about people like me, people who work hard, who do their best, but just need a second chance. I know what it's like to feel invisible. I know what it's like to feel like no one is coming to help. And that's why we're here. To be the people who help. To be the people who see the ones who are usually ignored. The crowd was completely silent. Jenna's throat felt tight, but she wasn't done. I spent my whole life believing I wasn't meant for anything more, she said, her voice thick with emotion. That people like me just had to survive and hope for the best. But I was wrong. I was never meant for less. I just never had the opportunity to be more. And that's what Second Chance Foundation is about. Giving people the chance they deserve. A moment of silence passed. Then, applause. Loud, thunderous applause. Jenna stepped back, overwhelmed, as Olivia clapped beside her. She had never been proud of herself before, but in that moment she was. Because she had found her voice. And this time, people were listening. Weeks after the event, Jenna sat in her office, staring out the window at the city below. Her phone buzzed, and she picked it up. It was an email from a young woman named Maria, asking for help finding a job after she had been laid off. Jenna smiled and typed out a response. "Hi Maria, I'd love to help. Let's set up a call." Because now, Jenna wasn't just surviving. She was changing lives, including her own.